Hey guys, so it's Willow, I'm back, and I'm going to teach you how to trace. I know what you're probably thinking. Wait a minute, is this an artist telling me it's okay to trace? Yes and no. You see, tracing is actually a really good way to teach yourself muscle recognition and, you know, it's a good way for your brain to remember how to draw things, but at the same time, it's wrong when you post it and say it's yours because technically it is not. Like, boy, you traced it, so sorry, it's not yours. It was somebody else's, and you basically just copied and pasted it. So, tracing is wrong only if you're trying to claim it as your own. But it is good for when you are trying to learn how to draw things. I actually do it a lot especially when I can't find a tutorial for something or I just feel like I really need practice. I sometimes just go on the internet, find a picture of the things I want to draw, and then trace over it. But just tracing is not enough, which is why I'm calling this video Tracing with a Goal. So, for this example, I am using some pictures of Amy Rose, and it's pictures from the IDW series. I know how to draw Amy, but I needed somebody to trace in order to show this video, so I've traced out 4 images of Amy. So the pictures I used of her aren't all from the same artist, but they are all under the IDW series. So they have a relatively similar style. I recommend if you're trying to trace and learn how to draw something not to use pictures that are drastically different. Whenever I am trying to use this method to learn how to draw something, I always use about 4 to 5 pictures because, the whole repetitious thing helps. So I definitely traced more than 4 of her. I did not realize that. I was actually watching TV when I was doing this, so I guess I just sort of went all out and didn't even realize. And now what I'm going to teach you is how to use these tracings to accomplish your goal, which is to learn how to draw them better. Sure, tracing is good for muscle recognition. You can trace all day and end up learning a lot. But at the same time, if you don't have a goal, there's not really a point. So, in this, I was trying to get proportions right and just improve because I technically already know how to draw her. Let's start off with a full body picture. So let's say our goal is getting proportions right. So we have 2 pictures of a full body of Amy. So we trace them, but now what? Well, there's questions that you gotta ask yourself, like the positioning and stuff. So I'm going to get a red color out. Okay, that's pink, but whatever. So for this picture, we have Amy, and this is her head size. Hold on, let me make sure I'm drawing on her. Hold on. Layers, people, they help. Okay, so this is her head size in this image. Sure, it's not technically straight. If you're trying to use proportions, I would also recommend trying to use a straight on pose of them and not something where they're making a dynamic pose, because whenever there's a dynamic pose, their proportions are always going to be a little bit off because they're trying to emphasize a motion that they're doing. Amy's head size. Now I'm going to relate it to the rest of her body. Her head takes up her whole center area, call it, the chest and stomach and her waist. So it's not it's not proportionate compared to a human body, but her head is as big as actually up to the tips of her boots. So now we know that whenever we want to draw her, we'd like to draw a head. Come on, Procreate, do what you're supposed to do. Thank you. Let's make it a little bigger. Okay, so we got her head. Now that we got that, I'm going to draw where her body would be. So whenever you're learning about proportions, it's really just relating one part of the body to another all the time, no matter what. It's like, it's not as hard as people really think. You just gotta think. It's sort of measuring just everything, so. Okay, so I got how tall her head is. Now I'm going to bring this line down because we just learned that her head is as big as her torso, waist, and her legs that show. Anyways, let's make sure we know how long her body technically is supposed to be. I'm going to make sure that I got the hip to torso right though. So her torso is longer. It's about, I'd call that about 2/3 of the way. So, okay. So we got Amy. And when I don't draw things exactly how they're supposed to be in the beginning, so it may look a bit sloppy. I'm sorry. Okay, now we are going to measure her head compared to her legs. I always like relating to the head to the rest of the body because I feel like the head is the main point, like the focal point of anything really, because you usually are using the face to get the emotion of the scene. So I usually like relating the head to the rest of the body because it not only is it like a main part of the body that people focus on, but it really does help. Amy's head is actually bigger than her feet too, so now we know that everything about Amy head is bigger. So these colors I'm using was actually from when I took one of the things, one of the tracings, and was coloring it. Once again, do not claim it as your own because that is not right. That's not cool. It is not yours. When we go back to the tracing, her socks, I guess, take up about a fourth of the way of the whole thing. So if we split this up into fourths, this is where her feet is going to end. So there we go. Now we got a basic body shape for Amy. And now we need her arm. And her arm isn't that hard to measure. Like, as you can tell, it goes past her hip. Yeah. When her hands are down, it goes about to her boots. And her arms go within the head too. So, like, she's a bit turned right here, but we still got like about a third of the head left over when you draw her arms on each side. So that's the thing about Sonic characters. Like, I'm still not used to the whole, they don't really have a neck and their head is a lot bigger than their shoulders. So sometimes I mess that up, but it is part of life. So I must get over it. So it's really her hand that starts around the hip area. So yeah, that's about her. What I have learned from tracing her face is that her eyes usually have this arc, and it's sort of sharp usually, especially when she's making a cocky motion or she's angry, or but it also is round when she is happy or is being freaky, as this one picture is showing. And I actually learned that in IDW, they usually round out the first part of her bang, but then they have the other two come to a point and then bend. So that's another thing I learned while I was tracing. So now I could apply what I have learned. But as always, I said you could use proportions. So we are going to, whenever you do proportions, you get the main parts of everything. So the main parts would be where the nose is, where the chin is, where the eyes are, and where sometimes I like to do the eyebrows too, because eyebrow spacing does change the way a person looks. But in this case, we don't really have eyebrows, really. So it's really her eye. So yeah, main things I'd recommend when you're trying to do proportions: where the eye is, where the nose is, where the chin is, and where the mouth is. For Sonic characters, I like doing where this patch, I don't know what you call it, I guess where their eyes meet their nose, I guess. That's technically, I don't know. this part, you know. So I usually do that part, the top of the eyes, and where the ears are supposed to go. So the spacing between her eyebrows, I guess, and her ears are not that far at all. Her eyes are the biggest part of the head, and her mouthpiece is the second largest. It is the same as from her ears to the top of her head about. Another thing you learn is that with Sonic characters, I don't know, what do you call it? Their mouthpiece. I don't, their mouthpiece. I'm gonna call it the mouthpiece, okay? I know the name of it. I don't know why I can't think of it right now. Anyways, their mouthpiece is always, you'll have the part that goes up a bit and then it'll go down a bit. And depending on the emotion, it'll curve downwards or it'll curve upwards. Most times, though, it is going to be curving downwards. Just mouthpiece, nose, and that's technically supposed to go. And then we got the eye. The eyebrows, they also have their own spacing from where they touch, like where they usually rest. Once again, depending on the emotion, her eyebrows would, where this part is, will go down more. Sometimes it's more up, but most of the time it usually rests. So about halfway through the face, about just a little lower than halfway through the face. So this one isn't even straight. You know what, whatever. Forget straight. Oh, don't ever forget straight. I just be talking to myself in a, yeah, do not listen to what I just said. Because that's not right. You should not forget about proportions. Now, her bangs take up. Her eyes usually flow into her bangs. Her bangs usually are about her shoulder height. Not her bangs, her hair. And for the first one, it also flows into her ears, which we learned is about right here. I noticed that different artists will sometimes change the ear height. Some make them bigger, some make them smaller, some make them more pointed, some make them more rounder. I guess it sort of depends on the artist. Then their eyelashes, like no matter what angle they are from, they are always going to go out at least 2 or past the first quill on the side of Amy. Yeah, so tracing really does help, like, as long as you're asking yourself the right questions while you're going about tracing. Like, when I was tracing, I was thinking more for inking purposes, because these are from comic books, these scenes, and I wanted to work on my line art. So I noticed that, like, in this Amy, usually when different parts are connecting, they usually won't connect the lines. Like right here, it's a different line direction, and they sort of just left that part out. Same with right here, and they don't make it really obvious, but like right here, change in line direction. And that is something I only realized when I started tracing. Like, about every time this artist changed a line direction, they, in a major way, they leave a little gap. Okay, so I ended up actually drawing her hands a bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And then I added a bit of negative space. So it's sort of like they did with some particle in the flat space. So yeah, that. I was also adding color because I felt like coloring, and this was actually my personal trying to improve on color and shading and stuff like that. That's why I started doing this. So even though I'm not talking about like really how to do it, that's why you see me doing it, because this was actually my personal study. And I hope you enjoy the final result, and hopefully I was somewhat helpful. I don't know, I'm not an art teacher, so have a great day. Willow out.